In Paris in 1830, Our Lady appeared to a young religious sister and gave her the design of a new medal. She promised that all who would wear it would receive special graces. Since then, millions of people throughout the world have worn the medal, and countless other stories of extraordinary favors received through it. The sister favored with the vision is today Saint Catherine Labouré, and the medal, Mary's Miraculous Medal. Catherine was born in the peaceful countryside of Burgundy in France, in a little village called Fin-les-Moutiers, situated about 200 miles south of Paris. The village is much the same today as it was in Catherine's time, with about 200 inhabitants living in a cluster of typical French country houses. One of the finest houses in the village belonged to the Labouré family, and it was here that Catherine was born on the 2nd of May, 1806. In the living room, you can still see the table on which the Labourés had their meals. Whilst over the fireplace are some old family portraits, her father Pierre and her mother Madeleine. The Labourés had 10 children. Catherine was the third youngest. Across the road from the Labouré home is the little church where Catherine was baptized, and this plaque records the event. Outside, over the entrance, is this statue of Our Blessed Lady. From an early age, Catherine was to display great devotion towards her Heavenly Mother. Her own mother died when she was just 9, and Catherine immediately turned to her Heavenly Mother for consolation. One day, after her mother's death, she was seen standing on a chair embracing the family statue of Our Lady. And she whispered to the statue, "From now on, you will be my mother." And the Blessed Virgin must have really listened to her words, because a very close bond grew up between Catherine and her mother Mary in heaven. Catherine was 11 when she made her first Holy Communion, and on that day she is believed to have made a vow to devote her life to the service of God. Then when she was 12, her older sister, Mary Louise, left home to join a religious community. Despite her tender age, Catherine took over much of the responsibility for the cooking and the general running of the house. Even with all her housework, she found time to go to daily Mass, although this meant rising at 5 o'clock in the morning and walking 2 miles to the next village, as the church across the road did not have its own priest. This is the church in the adjoining village of Moutier-Saint-Jean, where she attended daily Mass, and where no doubt she began to grow more and more in holiness. In the evening time, when her household chores were finished, she would often cross the road to her local church for further prayers. You see here the interior of this church. One night she dreamt that she was in this church and a strange priest was saying Mass. After Mass, still in her dream, she called to see a sick friend, and there in the house was the same priest who had said Mass. He spoke to her and told her that it was good to take care of the sick. Next he said that while she would leave him then, someday she would come back to him because God had special plans for her. Some time later, while staying in the nearby town of Châtillon, Catherine called to the house of the Daughters of Charity, which was the religious community her sister had entered. She was shown into the parlor, and on the wall she saw a face she thought she recognized. As she stared at the picture, she realized it was the face of the priest she had seen in her dream. When she asked who he was, she was told that he was the man who had founded the order some 200 years previously, the great St. Vincent de Paul. This discovery intensified Catherine's desire to enter the religious life by joining his Daughters of Charity. She waited until she was 21 to ask her father for his permission to enter. Initially he refused, but a couple of years later he relented. And in January 1830, Catherine joined the community of St. Vincent de Paul in Châtillon. A few months after entering, Catherine moved to the mother house of the community, which was then and is today situated in the Rue de Bac in the heart of Paris. And it is here that at number 140 that she began her formal religious training on the 21st of April 1830. By the time Catherine arrived in the Rue de Bac, she had developed a great devotion to St. Vincent de Paul, and by a happy coincidence, 4 days after her arrival, she had the great joy of taking part with thousands of others in a famous and historic procession through the streets of Paris. The occasion was the final transfer of the silver reliquary containing the remains of St. Vincent de Paul from the Cathedral of Notre Dame to its final resting place in the Vincentian Fathers' Chapel just around the corner from the Rue de Bac. Following this, Catherine sometimes prayed before the saint's remains, but mostly she prayed at this shrine dedicated to him in the chapel attached to her convent. In May 1830, Catherine told her spiritual director, Father Aladel, that on 3 different occasions, while she was praying here, she saw the saint's heart in front of her. He advised her to try and forget about it, as he felt it must have been her imagination. The 18th of July 1830 was the eve of the feast of St. Vincent de Paul, and on that day Catherine poured out her heart to him for a most extraordinary request. Her request was that through his intercession she would have the privilege of actually seeing her Heavenly Mother whom she loved so much. Catherine went to bed as usual at about 9 o'clock that night. At about 11:30 she was awakened from her sleep by a child of 4 or 5 years. Catherine didn't recognize the child. She concluded he was her guardian angel. The child led Catherine to the convent chapel, to a spot beside Father Director's chair. On arrival, she found the chapel beautifully illuminated, even though at that hour all the lights in both the convent and the chapel should have been extinguished. Around midnight, Catherine heard a noise coming from her right-hand side. And while she stirred in wonder, Our Lady came towards her and sat on the Father Director's chair as portrayed in this wall plaque. And this is the very chair on which Our Lady sat for about 2 hours. she invited Catherine to kneel beside her. The scene is recalled in this piece of sculpture, which is to be found today over the entrance to the Rue de Bac convent. She gave Catherine a message for herself and for all people. Come to the foot of this altar. There graces will be poured on all who ask for them. Our Lady told Catherine that God had a special mission for her, but did not tell her at that stage what it was. It was not until Catherine had her second apparition on the 27th of November 1830 that she was to learn what her special mission was to be. She was praying in the convent chapel at about 5:30 in the evening when Our Lady appeared. Initially, she was holding a small globe in her hand. But then the scene changed, and Catherine saw Our Lady standing on a larger globe with her foot crushing the head of a serpent. Her hands were now unfolded, and Catherine could see the rays of light coming from gems on her fingers. Later, describing the scene to her spiritual director, Catherine said, "Our Lady was beautiful beyond words." She said that as she gazed at the rays of light, she heard a voice saying, "Behold the symbol of graces which I will shower down on all who ask me for them." She said that an oval frame then surrounded Our Lady, and she could read on it, written in letters of gold, the prayer, "O Mary, conceived without sin, pray for us who have recourse to thee." The oval frame then turned, and Catherine could see the reverse side, a large letter M surrounded by a cross. Underneath the letter M were two hearts, one crushed by thorns, the other pierced by a sword. And Catherine took these to be the hearts of Jesus and Mary. Catherine next heard the voice say, "Have a medal struck according to this model. Those who wear it, when it is properly blessed, will be the recipients of great graces." Catherine told her spiritual director, Father Aladel, that Our Lady had appeared to her and had asked that a medal be produced in accordance with a specific design. But once again he felt that she must be imagining it all. However, a short while later, Catherine came back to him and said that in another message, Our Lady had expressed her grave disappointment at the long delay in having the medal struck. So Father Aladel and his superior went and told the story to the Archbishop of Paris, Monsignor de Caylon. The Archbishop felt that there was not enough evidence to take seriously the story of the young sister, but he was nonetheless intrigued by the design of the medal. It was complex and original, but the symbolism was in full conformity with the Church's teaching on the role of Our Lady. So he decided to go ahead and have copies of the medal produced, without any commitment to Catherine's claim that she had received the design from Our Lady. To his surprise, the demand for the medal grew and grew, not only from people in France, but from people throughout the world. Originally, the medal was known as the Medal of the Immaculate Conception, but because of the numerous cures and conversions attributed to it, it soon became popularly known as the Miraculous Medal. The Archbishop of Paris felt that in view of the extraordinary way that interest in the medal had grown, he should take seriously Catherine's claim that she had received the design of it from Our Lady. So he established a commission of inquiry. Now Our Lady had instructed Catherine to speak of the apparitions only to her spiritual director, so she did not appear before the commission herself, but she answered all their questions through the medium of Father Aladel. After a full investigation, in 1836, the commission reported in favor of the supernatural origin of the medal. In the meantime, Catherine had finished her initial training in 1831 and had been assigned to another house in Paris a hospice for the old in Enghien, about 3 miles from the Rue de Bac. And it was here that she spent the remaining 46 years of her life, looking after the old and the sick. True to Our Lady's request, she maintained a silence about her experience, and apart from her spiritual director, she told no one about what she had seen. And although the whole world knew that one of the daughters of charity from the Rue de Bac had seen Our Lady in 1830, and some of her colleagues even suspected that it was Catherine, her identity was never revealed. In the spring of 1876, Catherine felt her days on this earth were numbered, and she decided to confide her secret to her Mother Superior, Sister Dufay. Some months later, on the last day of December 1876, Catherine died. She was 70 years of age. The sisters released the news that the member of the community who had seen Our Lady in 1830 was dead. And suddenly, Catherine, who had remained unknown throughout her life, was now the most talked about person in all Paris. And for 3 days, thousands of Parisians filed past her remains to pay their last respects. She was laid to rest on the 3rd of January 1877 in the chapel attached to the hospice where she worked so diligently for the poor and the sick for 46 years. After the death of Catherine, people began to realize the extraordinary life of prayer and self-sacrifice she had led. They started to pray to her, and their prayers were frequently answered. A number of miraculous cures were attributed to her intercession. The cause for her beatification and canonization was subsequently introduced, and her case was considered in the Vatican. In 1933, as part of the process for her beatification, her body was exhumed. It was found to be in a perfect state of preservation. It was brought back to the Rue de Bac and carried in solemn procession into the chapel of the apparitions. Later, her body was placed in a glass coffin at the exact spot where Our Lady had given her the design of the Miraculous Medal 103 years earlier. And here, her miraculously preserved body can be seen to this day. In 1947, His Holiness Pope Pius XII, in a crowded St. Peter's in Rome, declared her Saint Catherine Labouré. He called her the Saint of Silence. Rome was also the location for one of the most famous 19th century conversion miracles related to the Miraculous Medal. The year was 1842. A wealthy French Jew, Alphonse Ratisbonne, was on a sightseeing tour of Rome. He was outspokenly anti-Catholic. His antagonism towards the Catholic Church intensified when his brother Theodore first of all became a Catholic and then a Catholic priest. Now Father Theodore Ratisbonne, without his brother's knowledge, was fervently praying to Our Lady for his conversion. While Alphonse was in Rome, he reluctantly agreed to wear a Miraculous Medal at the request of a friend. A few days later, while he was wearing the medal, Alphonse was visiting this interesting 17th century church, the Church of Sant'Andrea della Frate, when suddenly he felt drawn to this side altar. And there Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal appeared to him. Alphonse was instantly converted, and when he asked to be baptized, it was discovered that he had a full understanding of the Catholic faith, his knowledge apparently having come to him like a bolt from the blue in the course of the apparition. A special church commission in Rome examined Alphonse's story. It came to the conclusion that the instantaneous conversion of Alphonse Ratisbonne was a signal miracle wrought through the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Alphonse later joined his brother as an ordained priest, and they devoted their lives to the conversion of Jews. Three years after the conversion of Alphonse Ratisbonne, a well-known English Protestant minister, John Henry Newman, decided to wear a Miraculous Medal round his neck. Within 2 months, he had decided to enter the Catholic Church. He went on to become one of the most famous theologians of the last century, Cardinal Newman. In 1858, 28 years after the apparitions in the Rue de Bac, Our Lady appeared in Lourdes. It is not always realized that there is a close link between the two events. At the time of the Rue de Bac apparitions, it was the teaching of the Catholic Church that Our Lady was conceived without original sin. But this was not an article of faith, and Catholics did not have to accept it. The design on the medal given to St. Catherine clearly referred to Mary conceived without sin. This fact considerably strengthened belief in the Immaculate Conception, and the Rue de Bac apparitions are believed to have influenced Venerable Pope Pius IX to seek the views of the Universal Church on this important question. The overwhelming support he received from virtually all the bishops throughout the world resulted in him proclaiming on the 8th of December 1854 the dogma of the Immaculate Conception, making this unique privilege of Our Lady an article of the Catholic faith. 4 years later, in 1858, Our Lady appeared to Saint Bernadette in Lourdes. When Saint Bernadette asked her who she was, she replied, "I am the Immaculate Conception." The Rue de Bac apparitions are thus seen as preparing the way for the declaration of the dogma. The Lourdes apparitions are seen as its heavenly confirmation. Although Lourdes was to become much more famous than the Rue de Bac, interest in the Miraculous Medal continued to grow. The number of medals produced grew from 1 million in 1835 to 10 million in 1836 to 100 millions in 1842. And by the time Catherine died in 1876, it is estimated that there were over 1,000 million medals in circulation. Before the end of the century, the Miraculous Medal was the most popular religious object after the crucifix. In 1917, inspired by the story of the Miraculous Medal, the great modern saint Maximilian Kolbe formed the Crusade of Mary Immaculate. This organization, which adopted the Miraculous Medal as its shield, now has over 3 million members worldwide. Significantly, he said his first Mass at this altar in Rome, where Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal appeared to Alphonse Ratisbonne. In Dublin, in 1921, Frank Duff founded the Legion of Mary. The very first meeting of the Legion took place around a statue of Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal. And when the Legion was designing its own standard, it chose the Miraculous Medal as its centerpiece. Today, the Legion of Mary has 1.5 million active members spread throughout the world. Over 100,000 meetings of the Legion Presidia take place every week in the presence of Our Lady's statue and the Legion standard, which enshrines the very medal itself. This remarkable faithfulness to the Miraculous Medal must be one of the reasons why Our Lady has blessed the Legion, making it one of the most successful lay apostolic movements of the century. In 1930, for the 100th anniversary of the Ruderbach apparitions, a group of Miraculous Medal devotees in the United States inaugurated the Perpetual Novena. It spread rapidly throughout the world, reaching Ireland in 1940, where it had an immediate impact. Hundreds of thousands of Irish men and women thronged the churches for these Monday night devotions. Sadly, interest in this devotion waned in the 1960s and 70s, but there was a revival when Pope John Paul II visited the Ruderbach Chapel in 1980. He went as a pilgrim to the very place where Our Lady had given the design of the Miraculous Medal to St. Catherine 150 years previously. To us, 150 years may seem like a long time, but Our Lady's message is timeless. So let us recall her words to St. Catherine: "Those who wear this medal, properly blessed, and who repeat the prayer, O Mary conceived without sin, pray for us who have recourse to thee, will have great graces." Our Mother Mary is only too anxious to bestow on us her countless graces. So let us take advantage of her sublime promise by faithfully wearing her Miraculous Medal for our blessing and her joy.